Here's an attempt to motorize the head on an Industrial Hobbies manual milling machine. Originally that crank right there on the table was hooked up to the shaft coming out of the side of the column. Spin the crank one way or another, the head goes up and down. I was chit-chatting with a gentleman that I work with, saying I'd like to motorize it, and the thought of using a cordless power drill came to mind. He said he had a DeWalt laying around, which I'll show you right now, which the batteries were dead in it. And the cost of 2 new batteries compared to the cost of buying a new gun, he was just going to toss the gun. And he ended up giving it to me, which I thank you very much, sir. Gutted out the motor out of it, hooked it up to a computer power supply. The gun is 18 volts. The computer supply has 3 12-volt legs on it. I hooked 2 to 12-volt legs together, which is the top yellow wires here. Hooked the 2 wires up, the two 12-volt wires up to the motor, and everything powered up. I held everything, bolted it to the machine, just holding it with my hand with a little coupler, and it was raising the head up and down fine, so I continued with the project. Ended up making up a small mount, which I'll try to show you here. Made this small mount up there, that bracket. It was out of a piece of round, I think it was lead Lloyd, I'm not sure, something out of the scrap bucket. I believe it was like 2.5 inches or 3 inches in diameter. Bored it out, milled some flats on the sides, put some holes in there so I could put the plexiglass on there. I probably can't get too good of a shot. No. I'll include some pictures of that all by itself. Bolted up the plate to the side of the mill, screwed everything together, and here's how it sits. Right now the trigger of the gun is still a full assembly. I haven't torn that apart yet. This top switch is forward, neutral, and reverse. Eventually I'd like to rip the whole thing apart, be able to put a knob or something to control the speed and have it set, and then just use a switch either forward or reverse to move the head up and down. When it's in its neutral state in the center, the switch doesn't do anything. If you move it off to one of the sides, you can hear it moving. So that would be nice. My arms aren't quite long enough to pull the trigger and give you a full view of the head going up and down. So I'm going to try to pick a point. I stuck a piece of paper somewhere up here so you can actually see yeah, there it is. So you can see the speed of it moving up and down. And right now, here's just on the trigger. And that's at full blast. And that's the clutch of the gun kicking in right there. Bring it down. Is what I'd like to be able to do is eventually move that motor right there, have it running right off the top of that Z-axis screw, which is up in here somewhere. Hook some sort of pulleys or something up there so it's directly driven off of there, with the hope to be able to bore with this. Right now, if it goes at a slow speed, it does seem like it can get the speed right there. You can see it moving slowly and slowly, and I pick it up. And bring it back up. I have not checked any sort of travel on it to see how far inches per minute that it moves or anything like that. Maybe I'll look into measuring that. Right now it moves up and down probably a little bit quicker than I used to be able to crank the hand wheel on it. And obviously there ain't no effort, so all I have to do is squeeze a trigger, which is nice. That's the power supply that was used. Pretty much gutted out all the wires that it had no intention on using, which you can see there's the aftermath right there. Rewired it all, tried to make everything nice and neat. Hooked it up to a little bar on the back, and everything seems to be panning out pretty well with it. And that's about it. One thing I did forget to mention is if you look down inside of here, you can see that metal wire right there just to the right of the tie. That wire hooked up to the switch on the top of the gun, which controls the low and the high speed. That played some havoc. Once the motor was out of the housing, the plastic housing of the gun, that thing just flopped around pretty easily. When I was putting in that top mount right there, removing the 4 bolts on the face of it, which I can show pictures of it later, the whole thing is all spring loaded in there. I've never had one of these apart before. With this project, I was trying to spend as little money as possible, so since the gun was given to me, I was trying not to wreck it. So I didn't disassemble the whole thing to see if there was a permanent way of locking this thing into low range. So I slid it forward and then put that tie around it, and it seems to be holding up pretty well. I just thought I would mention that.